My name is Lori. Welcome to my channel here at YouTube. We are quilters. I was tired of looking at the thread wall, so I put up a quilt that is a blast from the past. It is an episode for another day. But we are here doing machine applique with freezer paper today, a technique that I hadn't really done a lot with. So I learned this technique just special for you. I've done machine applique before, but this added an extra level of awesome to the technique. So here we go. I used a couple book resources at Play with Appliqué. She suggested that you use freezer paper and fold it in fourths so you know where the center is. I also found this in my collection of dies to go with my Appliqué cutter, and it goes along with this book by the same woman, the Rosa Sharon book. So I used all of those resources to help me out today. I used my Appliqué die to cut some cardboard templates. And with the cardboard templates, when you run that thin sheet through, you also end up with the reverse. So you can use either set of shapes and end up with the same result. So I used the stencil part, let's call it. I also have some June Taylor circles and flowers. I have the stars somewhere too. I like this size of circle better. It didn't match the one on the Appliqué die. So I drew out what I wanted, and I numbered it from the background up. I ironed my freezer paper onto my background fabric. Then I started my search for fabrics. The leaves fit a 3.5-inch block, so I got out that box and started rooting through looking for leaves and those little flowers, and I ended up with this pile of fabrics for the whole block. I held this up to my ring light so I could see. Should have gotten out the light table. I pinned from the paper side because you're sewing on the paper side. Set your stitch to a very short stitch. And when you turn as you sew, needle down. Always, hint, hint, always check to make sure your fabric is not folded over. Between sewing on the layers, like these are both layer 1 leaves, you have to trim off the excess fabric. So, she said in the book that I showed you earlier that if you're using regular scissors, you need to keep them as flat as possible so you get close to your seam. And that does work pretty well, because you're going to cover this seam with satin stitches here at the end. So that was with regular scissors. Let me get the appliqué scissors and we'll see if that works any different. Now I have my fancy duckbill appliqué scissors and I'm going to trim out this shape. We'll see if that works any better. But you don't need these, I just proved that to you. I just happen to have these because I used to do a lot more appliqué on little bags for my students for their birthdays. That made them feel good and had their name on it. But I would always put a shape, and sometimes it had appliqué. I need to get these ones sharpened and clean. They're still pretty sharp, but they've got some spots on them that's shameful, because these were not cheapy duckbill scissors. Oh, that works pretty well. That's easier to hold on to, but it doesn't get much closer if you look at both. It's about the same distance. This is a little bigger, but it works pretty well. So, on to layer 2. I am sewing right on the line, and I am using a very small stitch. But you know, if I get off of the line, And I have to stop every once in a while and roll and tuck, because I've decided to use this machine for the straight stitch. I will not be using this for the other part. But because I am using this as a straight stitch, the roll and tuck is an important thing, because you want to be able to control and sew on the line. So it's a matter of roll it up and fiddle with it. Not super difficult, just takes a little time. So if you don't have any patience, applique won't be for you until you find some. I'm going to pull the machine more toward me so I can. That's the bad. The bad part seems to be that it would depend on how much space you have around your area to work. So there's one. I am going to be back in a minute. Technically, you could leave that as raw edge applique, but I don't think I would. Here is my scrap fabric for my test to get my stitch set right on the other machine. The first shape looks good, so let me show you what I did. Okay, I have done the background layers just for a little practice before I put you on camera. And I am now to the second layer, the chartreuse green. So I do not have much of it's not an open toe foot, but that helps me line it up with the seam better. And I need to pay attention with where my needle's coming down, and I need to keep that pretty much centered. So it's not difficult to sew over that. You did see my picture of the practice piece. I used pure garbage piece, and I got it until the stitch I wanted. And it's important that you do that and not on the piece that you worked so hard to get to this point. So I am going to sew just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, especially when I get to the outside point. I probably actually should start here because I will be covering that. So let me move this to the spot where I'm going to start, because I'm going to cover that up with when I get to the other part. So let me start there. And I have the stitch very, very tight, so it moves very slowly. But I don't want to push it. And since it's an outside point, I want to end on the outside so that it will stitch over that point when I turn it. And when I stop there against the green, it doesn't matter where I stop, because when I sew this way, it will cover up that ending thread. Okay, I've moved back to that original spot, and I'm going to stitch so that and if I need to, I can raise the presser foot. Okay, outside point to the outside. And I'm just going to sew right over the end, right down into those leaves. And it'll be covered up when I do those leaves. Looks pretty good so far. Choosing threads, that's half the fun. I have finished the green leaves, and now I'm working on the pink flower. I started at one of these cleavage spots, and when you're on the inside, you always stop with your needle down on the inside. So I will stitch along. You have to move slowly and pay attention. Make sure you're not getting hung up anywhere. And then on the bigger part of the curve, you might have to move your hands a little faster and stop with your needle on the inside because it's an inside curve. And then it will cover itself up. I'll be back in a few minutes to show you the pink. The stitching on the top is all done. So the book said that if you use nice tight stitches here, that the paper would come right off. So let's turn it over and see if it comes. Oh, it does. Look at that. Woo! Gotta love a technique that actually works. And I know that, oh, look at that, right out of there. So this is a winner. Hang on a second till I get all this paper off of here. The inside paper seems to come out fairly easily too. I mean, because my stitches are nice and tight and thick. And I could have even made them smaller and thicker. And I could trim this out, but I'm not going to. Because I don't mind it stabilizing itself. Now, where the stitches are for the leaves might be a little more challenging, but when you use the embroidery machine, sometimes you have to pick paper, or if you do paper piecing, you have to use tweezers to get those little pieces if it bothers you. But it looks like it's going to come out pretty easily. Look at that. Just pick it up with my thumbnail. Oh, there's a thread that needs snipped. So I think that this technique is a winner because anything that you can draw or trace, you can turn into an applique block without using templates. And anytime you don't have to use templates, in my mind, is a win. Just saying. If you really like templates, well, then this wouldn't be for you. But for the most part, I'm quite happy with the outcome. Let me finish this and then we'll flip it back to the front. Okay, here's the big reveal moment. There's the back. There's the front. So I'm pretty pleased with the way it came out. It probably took me about 3 hours from start to finish because I was cutting out templates and I was making up my own pattern, not using one from a book, so that I wouldn't have to worry about copyright infringement, that kind of stuff. So, and I was a little out of practice using the satin stitch. So with practice, it would be even smoother. And I could use a little bit narrower stitch if I had been practicing more and recently. So I like this freezer paper technique. This one might be a good one to pull out a bright light. I was holding it up in front of my camera, the ring light, so that I could see and I didn't have to have a whole big piece of fabric. But win-win. Thank you for stopping by. Have fun appliquing something this week. Practice makes perfect.